All right, we now do a couple of examples on lists and strings so that, we are able to adapt quickly when we go into the IoT applications. For now, just create a new file and let's just save it as, save it in IoT basics. So I'm going to save it as, list examples. All right, list examples, functions, just to use them for example. So now say, for example, I'm going to have a function which is going to return to me the squares of all the lists. So for now, I have a list. Let me call it as LST. Now, this particular list, when I take it from, I'm going to define it, let's say, as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, I'm going to call a function called as SQR. And I'm going to pass my list as one of the parameters. So I'm going to call a function SQR. And one of the arguments that is going to be passed in SQR is the list that I have defined. So that means I need to have this function. I need to define this function. Okay. Let me define it. Def SQR. What does it take? It takes a list. So I can just take it into a variable called as ls. Now ls can be a list, of course, right? So I take that up. And what do I need to do? Now, what does this function do exactly? This function should return to me another list which consists of all the squares of each of the elements of this list. Like say, for example, it should return to me another list which contains the squares, which means 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, and 36. It should return to me a square of each of the elements of the list, which means I should return a new list. So how do I use the list methods and stuff in order to send it back? All right. One of the ways is I'm going to create an empty list. Let me call it as SQ, an empty list SQ. So it's an empty list. All I need to do is I need to iterate over each of the elements in the list that I have got in my function. What is the list that I've got in my function? ls. I need to iterate over each of these elements. So I will say for every element in ls, what must I do? I must iterate over each of these elements and say what? I should say for every element in ls, what should I do? I should say sq.append. What is sq? Sq is an empty list. I should keep appending into this sq a new element which should contain what? The element square. Which one is this element? For E, this particular element which is there in the list, I should just do an element square and append it to this SQ list. Okay? That will keep happening in the for again and again until all the elements are appended into SQ. What should this SQR function do at the end? It should return what? It should return this SQ list, a new list. Of course, the new list, when you call this particular function now, when you call SQR, it returns an SQ list, which I'm going to store it in SQR LST, square list. I'm just defining a variable. All I need to do is print, okay, the original list is, oops, I need to have a double quote out there, is what? LST, and the squared list is SQR LST. Right? This is what happens. Let's run this out. Cool. The original list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and the squared list is 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36. I hope you understand how we use the list methods and the functions and how we call them from our main file. Okay, so I'll call this as the main and this is a function. I call the function SQR over here and I passed my list. And this function returned to me another list which consists of all the squares of all the lists. So this is one of the ways that you could have done. But there is a better way. I will show you a more excellent way. And that way is by using something called as list comprehension. List comprehension. One of the most beautiful concepts in Python. What happens is, Python says, instead of doing this, instead of taking all of these out here, I can just comment them out for now. So I'll comment them with a triple quote, right? Now, instead of returning SQ, all I need to do is I need to return another list. If I have to return another list, I need to say it very explicitly by putting this square bracket. Return another list. What should this list contain? What should this new list contain? This list should contain, for every element in the original list, which is the original list, ls. For every element in ls, this new list should contain, what should it contain? Element square. Just one line. All you have to do is return, you have to just say square list, you should just return another list, and it should say what is the element that this list contains for every element in the original list. Hope that is very clear. Function F5, okay, and here we have the same output. Yes, this is how list comprehension works. Alright, what if I did not want the square of every element of the list, but I wanted the square of every odd element in the list. Of every odd element, which means I wanted a list which contains the squares of 1, 3 and 5. That means 1, 9 and 25. I wanted that. Then in my list comprehension, I should write there, return another list which consists of element square for every element in list if the element modulus 2 is not equal to 0. That is an odd number. If that element, for every element in the list, if the element mod 2 is not equal to 0, then return the element square. Function F5. Can you see that? 1, 3, 5, the squares of that. So it's very simple if you will think about how to use list comprehension. So you can have any list, you can have LST, which is going to be, 4, something like this, or something very weird, or something so much. All I need to do is, I need to say, if I create another list SQR is equal to, I need to create using list comprehension. For every element in LST, I require SQR to contain element square. That's it. A one-line list comprehension makes SQR a new list which contains elements square from LST. This is one of the most beautiful concepts in Python. Now, why is this taught in IoT? Because there may be times when you might have to take in some inputs, and you might, take user inputs or something like that, which can change, which you might have to process it. Like, say, for example, I'm going to give you an example for list comprehension. I'll just open a new file and tell that to you. I'll save that, and I will say taking list input, which means I want to take from the user a list input, a list as an input. How do I take that? How do I do it? Let's understand that in detail.